Hi, welcome back to the Heretic Sisters. My name is Suzanne. I'm the hopeful heretic. I'm interested in exploring all of the frequencies with the hope of revealing something higher than our limited minds can grasp. Questions I'm pondering: what is the truth? Can we both have an individual truth and a shared truth? Is it possible to be an individual within a group? What is our individual versus shared responsibilities? Is shared and balanced equity possible?
Hi, I'm Tatiana and I'm the fearful heretic. I'm all about getting to the bottom of things. I also want to try everything at once. Questions I'm pondering: how does one see reality without distortion? How can we embrace all the blooming complexities of life? How do we express our experiences in creative work? The question, was it all for, has not left me since my teenage years.
All right, so we have a very interesting presentation for you today, or interview for you today, and it's kind of taking a little bit of a different glance at projections. A lot of the times, we have these struggles as projected profiles, especially the 5-1, around getting burned at the stake, because we put out these projections, and then people get to know kind of the other sides of us, and if we're not living up to that projection, that's where we can get into trouble. And when I was putting this out and for a call for other people who wanted to be interviewed on this show, this is where I met Elizabeth in the groups. And Elizabeth was like, well, I don't really understand the 5-1 in me because I don't have the same experience at being burned at the stake. Like, I don't get it. And at the time, I was actually looking at human design and the way that the I Ching was layered over the wheel, and I was having some doubts about it. And I was like, well, I'm reviewing this, and maybe it has something to do with that. Like, maybe you're really not what human design says you are. And people do this all the time. Like, they go to different systems and they're like, well, that's not really who I am. This is who I am, like with the whole side reel and all sorts of things. And then when I started to get to know Elizabeth a little bit more, I looked at her chart, and we actually had a private session. I was like, oh, okay. There are reasons why she doesn't feel the same as everybody else. But then when we were kind of unpacking this and we were preparing for this show, I was like, this is such an interesting exploration, because in a way, in human design, Ra always talks about, well, the projection is great. If people are projecting on me a certain thing, that's living up to my profile. And in some ways, nobody can see us really, truly as 5-1s. It's very special when we meet somebody who we think can see us a little bit. But really and truly, it's very difficult for us in our lives. I've spoken to many, many 5-1s to really feel like somebody can truly see us. And so in some senses, I was like, this is actually kind of positive, and I want to look at it from that lens, because there are a lot of things that as a 5-1 that can be positive in our lives when we play off of those positive projections and actually live more privately. And the interesting thing about Elizabeth is she's a writer, and what how I'd like to introduce her is basically based on some of the personas that she actually connects to. And then we're going to look at their charts, because they're very interesting and fascinating. I don't think she knew about their designs, but I was like, oh, what are their designs? I want to see how and why she's drawn to them, because we're always drawn to people for specific reasons. And celebrity, no matter what profile they are, we're projecting on them. They're putting out a persona. It's like, we don't realize that we long for their lives, but it's just a persona. And we don't really know what their internal life is. We don't know what their real life is. And if we actually were with them for any amount of time, we might be quite disappointed in the reality of that. So, Elizabeth, I'm going to stop talking and I'm going to ask you sort of, who are these people to you and why were you drawn to them?
Sure. Let me see. Well, Natalie Portman on the bicycle, I feel like that kind of looks like me on a normal day, like kind of her style. When I was I mean, I'm not sure how old she is. I'm a little older than her, but people used to tell me that I looked like her, and I feel like I identified with that, but also that she's kind of a conservative, she's not like out there crazy. I don't know. I guess she's maybe private also, but I kind of I just appreciate that sort of, she's a big star, but she's not, uh, on the front cover of every magazine telling all her business and all that kind of stuff. Um, Claudia Schiffer, I just always wanted to be her. Like I was always very skinny stick person, not curvy, not a gorgeous bombshell. And I always like if I could be, I guess, look like someone, I would want to look like her and I would totally flaunt it. And I've enjoyed watching her over the years and just seeing her pop up every now and then and being like, oh my God, there she is. And, she still looks amazing and how she's sort of changed over the years, but still kept like that thing that she has. Taylor Swift, I remember when she came out, I always liked her as a writer. I have appreciation for someone who's going to sing about, have a Shakespeare reference in their song. So she got me with that immediately. And then I didn't really pay attention to her until more recently because I have a tween. And now Taylor Swift is popping up on my Facebook pages. Everyone's going to her concert, and all the girls love her. And I started paying more attention to her as I saw that she was a 5'1" on the Facebook board. And there's a lot of things I love about her. She writes everything herself. I also used to do theater, so I was very much in performing, putting on a major show that she is choreographing and she is setting up, and it's insanely huge. She's such a successful businesswoman. There's just all this stuff, and she embraces this sort of sexy side of herself, and she comes out in a beautiful purple ball gown, and she's all sparkly and loves pink, and I love all those things. Like I love really girly stuff, and she's not afraid to go out there and be like just very girly. Doesn't have to be like half naked. Most, like so many women musician star people feel like they need to be showing it all. She doesn't do that. It's like she can still be sexy and amazing and have on an amazing ball gown or, a Stevie Nicks type flowy outfit. And I love all these things. So like I have developed a love for Taylor, I guess, as an adult that I didn't have so much when I was younger, but I just appreciate all these things about her and that she gives to charities. And I don't know how she deals with all these people talking about her all the time, but yeah, I think she's pretty amazing.
This is the first time I heard about you being in theater. What did you do in the theater?
I really, really wanted to be an actress, I guess. So around fifth grade, I saw the movie Annie and decided I must be little orphan Annie. And then from there, I really wanted to do theater classes, but there was nothing really available to me until we moved to Baltimore, Maryland. And I went to a high school that just had a huge arts department. I became very involved in theater. Our teacher was the director at the Merrick Barn at Johns Hopkins University. So she was like a director there and then also teaching us acting. And so she did lots of stuff with us. Like we performed Merchant of Venice for a bunch of stuff and just lots of stuff with her at school. And then I did some acting for her at Johns Hopkins. And that just kind of grew. But then it sort of cut off when my dad got sick and we moved and some stuff like that. So, but I love theater. Like I love being on a stage and listening to the wood underneath your feet, how it sounds and the light.
I was my past life was an actress, so
Oh, really?
yes. So we have to talk about that more because this really does play into this projected dream, I think. So that's interesting. I want to come back to it, but I want to look at their charts because I think they're very interesting.
Yeah, let's do it.
Understanding you and understanding who you're drawn to.
Okay.
So Claudia, she is the only one with a defined throat, and we'll see in a minute Elizabeth has an undefined throat. Only one that with a defined throat, and she's a 2-4, and I know you're drawn to 2-4s, and they are in harmony with the 5-1s, although both my parents were 2-4s. I think that's why I'm not drawn to them, because I didn't have a good relationship, but you had one, and I'm now I'm really curious if your parents were 2-4s. But Claudia is a 2-4, and she's the only one that really was a model, so she didn't use her throat very much. She started coming out a little bit later in her life using her voice. But I just thought it was so interesting because here Natalie and Taylor both have undefined voices, and they're the actress and the singer. And so I thought that was interesting. And then Natalie is a 2-4 as well, and she's got some privacy. She has some themes of privacy in her chart. So that's kind of why you're drawn, I think, probably drawn to her. It's like that hermit. It's like that hermit part of them that kind of makes them a little bit more set back and not as flamboyant, like Taylor, who's a 5-1. And so Claudia is on the cross of the sleeping phoenix, and then Natalie is on the cross of rulership, which you have a connection to. And then Taylor Swift is the cross of confrontation. So she's here to really confront. But I also noticed, because we'll talk about this in a minute, is they all three have gate 45, which is instrumental in your chart. So I thought that was interesting. And, two of them are emotionally defined. And I just thought it was just interesting because there's some patterns in your chart that show up in these people and why you're drawn to them in a way, and kind of see yourself in them in certain ways. And as you've seen, you've got a couple of kids too. So some of them are reflected in these charts. So I just always think it's very interesting to see, the people that we're drawn to and why we're drawn to them.
But all three persons, I like your taste, Elizabeth. All three ladies are amazing. Like Natalie Portman is like my kind of idol since her childhood. Yeah, when I saw her in Leon the Killer. Yeah, but V for Vendetta, she is amazing. And Taylor Swift, this is a person who deserves a huge respect from all the sides, like a singer and as a charity activist and everything she does for us women, actually.
Yeah, I think they're all pretty amazing. It's really cool to see their charts.
Yeah, because it's like, people have this generic understanding, I think, of the undefined throat. And I always think it's really interesting when you look at it from a larger perspective and who has them and how powerful they are in the ways that they connect to that undefined throat. Like Taylor for sure. And she's just a master at the projection field. And she's, she's got that powerful ego. But she just kind of goes out and she uses it to her advantage. But I thought it was so interesting for you because, you said, well, I liked her, but it wasn't just till recently that I really started to respect her a lot more. And that's connecting to that 5-1 energy that I think is kind of simmering in you to start to lean into, I guess, a little bit more. And she's the only 5-1 here. And so I think that's,
I had, I had always kind of liked her, but I hadn't really paid attention to her. And when I started paying attention, I was like, holy, what has happened here? Like, what has this woman done? I mean, she was a child, when she started. And I just didn't realize that she had grown into this powerhouse.
Yeah.
That she's so powerful, and I think it's really cool. And she's able to connect to such an enormous amount of people. It's just insane.
Yeah. I think that's the power of the 5-1, definitely. Go ahead, Tatiana.
But the scope she achieved is like unimaginable. This 1% of American economy, and her influence, even Madonna didn't reach that amount of influence. Even economical one, the one we can touch with our hands, and all a lot of my friends, so mothers with daughters attending the concerts, and the husbands also attending concerts of her concerts here in Europe. Yeah, definitely. The scope and the level she reached is unbelievable, simply.
And just to realize that she's got the 45, but it's like her opposition to her son. You know what I mean? So it's just basically where she finds balance. So it's like almost like she has, and we'll look at your chart and from that perspective, it's almost like she's got a totally open throat. If you looked at it from an astrological perspective, even though you do in astrology look at the polarity, it's still different, it's not like it's part of you. It's almost like that balancing point. So she probably really had to develop that balancing point. I mean, she's got that very, very strong ego with her son in 26.5. So that's where she kind of goes out and is able to sell to the tribe. But beyond that, I think she's got that just amazing capacity to not only sing powerfully, but to perform and to write. And I think that's kind of the trifecta of her celebrity, is that, she's not just a superficial, like people want to kind of point her toward that superficial lens, but she's, so much more than that. And I think people started to respect her a lot more as they started to see the power of what she's bringing in. Because a lot of people like to dismiss her. And then people were like, no, she's bringing in so much money, and she puts on these fabulous shows. And she's not only that, she's writing her material. So to me, that she's just got that real strong power, celebrity power to her.
Yeah, and the way she uses her 2838 and 1858, as a source, as a battery for the soul, for this 4426.
Yeah, and she's got like a very she's got an open solar plexus, but she's got all of these gates off of it, so she must connect in a lot of ways to and I thought that was interesting because you have the 35, and so two of these people have the 36, which is more about the experience, and you are reaching out for the experience, and these people are reaching out for the 35, that the vocal to what would you call that, Tatiana, the 35? What is the 35 here? They're looking for the experience, but what would the 36 be looking for in the 35?
Oh, that's a good question. So, but it looks like 35 would digest the experience provoked by 36.
Oh, yeah.
So it's like complete and digest this experience, if I'm understanding it correctly. Because 36 provokes, and then the experience comes to an end, and one can share the results. Yeah.
It's sharing the change, the going forth, and how it changed you. So how the experience changed you, I guess. Okay. So I want to look at your chart, and I want to, and as you see, there's some themes here. She's got a lot of design unconscious gates to her throat. She's got Saturn on the 45 and the 35, which kind of restricts. So even though the personality is there, for Saturn being there, it's more of a restrictive kind of a cautious approach to sharing. But otherwise, and she's got a south node, which is the direction. It's more the environment. So in many ways, for Elizabeth, she too has themes of unconscious themes of her throat, and not so much conscious, except for that Saturn. And like I said, that Saturn is kind of what draws her to the 45 and the 35 or the 36, the other side, to really connect to the celebrities that she was attracted to. And there were some other themes too. But I want to just to start off by asking questions. We prepared some questions, and Tatiana, I want you to begin because you had some questions at the beginning.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so of course we would like to start with the question regarding how your path started and how did you first discover human design? What led you, Elizabeth, to this realm of self-discovery and the mystical?
I've always been interested in like tarot, astrology. I have tons of books on these things. Haven't actually learned them like in completeness, but I have, explored that sort of stuff for a long time. And I love like the personality tests like Myers-Briggs and Enneagram.
Mm-hmm.
And I think around 2020, I started doing a bunch of these personality tests online. They would never come out the same. So I felt frustrated that I couldn't like figure out what I was. And I just felt like I needed to figure myself out and figure out what it is I'm supposed to do here. Like, what am I here for? What's the big thing? I don't have tons of time left. I mean, I'm like in the middle of my life. So I was just doing research on that, and I came across human design, and I just thought it was fascinating. And I started reading books, and I think I went on Reddit, which led me to the Facebook groups. And on the Facebook groups, and even I didn't look at Reddit a lot because I was more interested, I guess, in the 5-1s than everyone else. But I started to notice that people were always posting that they were having a hard time with friends, or they couldn't make any friends, or their friends turned on them, or they felt like they were burned at the stake for something. And I just did not, or someone would post like a picture or something and it would represent this. And I was like, I just don't like connect to this whole people don't like me thing. I've always had like a lot of friends. I have a pretty big friend circle, closer circle and family and everything. And so I just didn't connect to this sort of idea at all.
Okay. But still, is human design and this understanding of the world around us and yourself is important for you? Is it a good tool you've found? And like, do you feel like my search is now ended? I have the tool and I can continue exploring it, or how do you feel it?
I mean, I still feel like I'm exploring and trying to like pin things down. There's so much information in human design and also astrology, because you've got all these houses and all these different things. And sometimes I don't know how, like, I can see what they are, but I don't know how to weave it together as a story, even though I am a storyteller.
Yeah.
So I need help like beyond just what I read.
Yeah.
So I'm in process.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think that it's hard for people, and especially when they don't relate to certain things, because it's hard to look at things in isolation. And a lot of times that's the way the information is given to us, is in isolation, because there are very much different parts of these systems that can kind of come into a cohesive whole, but there are contradictions in us. So it's like sometimes it's very confusing, even when you have that holistic understanding and you can weave it all together. There's contradictions and things that you have to unpack over time, because there's, even with you, when I was starting to look, I was like, oh, well, you're more private because of this undefined throat. And I saw a couple of things, but then after I got to know your charts a lot better, then I was like, oh, okay, there's reasons why you're so private and very careful with who you let into that innermost, self, even from yourself, I think. And so that's what I think is challenging about human design, from not only from somebody who's trying to learn about ourselves, because as projectors, it's really hard for us to even look at ourselves. We look at other people and we learn about ourselves through other people. But I think it's also like, even from a practitioner's perspective, I mean, I'm continuously unpacking and learning things as I go, and developing better ways to weave the stories together. But also, I think it's hard for people because they're like, they go to people and they want everything solved in a minute. And I think it takes time to unpack. You're so complex, as a person. It takes time to unpack all of these themes from a life. But the map gives you at least some direction to go. And that's what I like about it, because I went to therapy for so many years and I didn't get anywhere. And then as soon as I started to study human design and astrology, I was like, oh, okay, now I'm starting to get it, even though it takes time to unpack that too. Wouldn't you agree, Tatiana?
Yeah, so just today I discussed it in a psychological group I attend to once a week, that what helped you to solve these and these problems and this to reach this and this types of understanding. And like, yeah, of course, psychology, I love it, I use it a lot, but without human design, I couldn't imagine that I would reach that level of consciousness in dealing with my problems. Not like I'm an enlightened person and so on, but you definitely can notice the results that come from knowing who you are, in addition to psychological works. Yeah. So first, human design was more active in my life, and then psychotherapy. But together, these tools are wonderful. But I'd like to ask you, Elizabeth, so regarding this 5-1 situation, and that you do not feel yourself as a real 5-1 sometimes, so as you see it. But have you ever had this feeling that people do not see me in fully? Yeah, so they perceive some part of me, but do not understand and see me as a complete, and the person with all my sides and completely.
I mean, honestly, I have not really noticed that, but since I've learned about human design, I try to pay a little bit more attention, if they see you, but don't they see themselves, or you reflect them back to the person? Is that correct?
Yeah. I mean,
So, kind of.
sorry. I think it's complex, the ways that people see other people. And I don't think it's just a 5-1 issue, but I definitely think people are drawn to us for certain projections that we put out, and not necessarily it's supposed to be conscious, and it is in a way. But we care, sometimes we you moved around a lot. I moved around a lot. Tatiana moved around, I think, more later in your
crazy. I would put it like this. Sorry.
So adapting, and you've got your son in the gate of adaptation, so it's even, so we can adapt to lots of different personalities, and I think people like us for that adaptation. But sometimes, depending on your design, my design very specifically, I rebel against that. I want people to see other parts of me, but it's not always to my advantage that they do that. So
I feel like I'm giving up on the matter. Yes, so like I stopped to care about it, just because yes, it's always the same thing again and again.
yeah.
You're lucky then, Elizabeth, that if you do not face such situations.
I think I've also seen that on the Facebook group, where I just felt like, yeah, I don't really notice these I think I've written this, like, I don't notice this. And is there like another group for 5-1ers who perhaps are not having these difficulties, or I don't know. I don't seem to have them. I have had people who just, I met and they flat out did not like me but I can count them on one hand. I know who they are, and it was just, nothing that I could do or say was right, and I just kind of didn't have anything to do with them. I don't really need them for anything.
Yeah. Do you think you've got that many people who really see you? That the you that you feel is, do you know the real you though? Do you really see you yourself?
Well, you've made me think about that since, having our session. I'm starting to think like, who really am I? Or like, I don't know. I mean, I feel like most of the time I just try to act like myself. I am generally sort of happy. I enjoy being around people, making friends, chatting, stuff like that. And I just do those things. But yeah, you've made me wonder, like, how well do I really know myself, or do I let myself be myself? Or is this like the safe version of myself? I don't know.
But it's a question we have to ask every morning, I suppose, to ourselves. And every evening.
Yeah. It's interesting because I was like looking at, because I'm such a curious person, so I look at all these things, and I was looking at your second, because you're already through your Chiron return, and we talked about that a little bit. But then I was looking at your second Saturn return, because you're still on your 5-1, because you changed profiles, and then I was like, well, I wonder what your second Saturn return looks like, and it's on the Cross of Masks. And you've got your Saturn in Gemini, and you're a Gemini rising. And so a lot of the times, Gemini, people with a lot of a strong Gemini leaning are the people that have identity. You don't have an open identity, but they are the people that have identity issues. It's not that they have, it's just that they kind of relate to a lot of different things. And so sometimes people see them as duplicitous because they're different things to different people. And I think that probably is compounded if you have an undefined G center, but you do have a defined G center. And you've got, the Jupiter in gate 10, which is, it's your law about who you are. So you have connection there. But it's an interesting exploration to really understand, I think, for you to really understand, well, do I see myself, and do I let people in enough to see those parts of me? But yeah, so Tatiana, did you have you have a few more questions?
Yeah, I have just regarding this sensibility and desire not to let too many people. Have you ever looked at your genetic trauma, all this stuff? Yeah, and the trauma separations that you have, like
Only
according
a little
to
bit with,
genes.
Suzanne and I, when we did our session, looked at some stuff with my family, but not like super in depth. What do you think, Suzanne? Help me.
Well, I think, I would love for you to talk as much as you want about your experience losing your parents so early, and how you think that impacted you. Because you said you just mentioned that you were really into the theater, which is a performance, very courageous way to be out there and performing as an undefined throat. I didn't know this about you. And then you said your father got sick, and I wonder how that's affected your your reaction, I guess, to, I think you've always been private, and you see that in your design, but I wonder how much that affected you and your and the ways that you went about going after your dreams.
That's a good question. So when I went to college, I was torn between, did I want to be an English major or did I want to do theater? And I decided to go with the English major. I do think that I had some fear of being on stage and just knowing that you had to do it like every weekend because it was very rigorous. Um, and I think it kind of intimidated me some. And then when I started to get into it with the community theater, when my high school director or teacher called me up and said, "Hey, do you want to do a show?" And then um, a guy who had been in the show then asked me, would I like to be Clara in the Baltimore Children's Theater performance of the Nutcracker, which I did very much want to do, but I had just found out my dad was sick and I didn't do it. I couldn't do anything. I just shut down. And I always regretted that. Like I always wish I had done Clara because that would have been amazing. I think that would have just been like really cool and could have led to other things, and people asked me to do other things. But instead, he did get sick, and then my family ended up moving back to their hometown, and I went with them for like 3 months and then headed to graduate school for writing. So yeah, like I think that maybe that, I would have gone on with theater if I had stayed there. And it was definitely something I wanted to do, but it just kind of, I went to Richmond and then didn't really pursue it anymore. But I was like pretty busy with graduate school and
Yeah.
also driving home a lot because I spend a lot of time at home also.
Yeah.
And it's an interesting the ways that things happen to us that change our trajectory. But you were recognized for writing too, and I see that talent in your chart. And so in some senses you were recognized for that, and you got into graduate school, and prior to that you had tried to write and you weren't recognized at that moment. We were talking about synchronicity, right, Tatiana?
Yeah. And serendipity in your chart, yeah. You wonderful photo, yeah. So how did it all happen?
Oh, well, I started writing plays probably as soon as I could write. I wrote like an Easter play, and my little brother's line was, "Yeah." He said, "Yeah," throughout the play. But, I started really early. When I got into high school, I tried to get on the literary magazine staff and was not invited. And then I submitted some things and they all got rejected. And I kind of took that as, okay, I'm writing, it's like a hobby. I'm not that good at it. I'm sticking with theater. And then I got into undergrad and actually graduated and was out for like a year or two. And I had this very boring job. And I just told my parents, like, I have to go back to the English department. Like, I need to be in the English department. Like, I'm like dying here of like boredom and I guess intellectual desert. And so they paid for me to go to 2 classes, and one was a creative writing class that my favorite professor was teaching. And one day he pulled me aside. He's like, "Did you know that you can write? like really write?" And I was like, yeah, I mean, I don't know. And so then he started encouraging me to look at the graduate school programs and to different writers' conferences and things like that. So yeah, I got kind of mixed messages where it's like, no, you're not good enough to do this one. But, then later it was like, oh, yes, you are actually talented at writing.
But it's nice that you met this person here, and he was so important for you. And when he said that you have a talent, it was a good signal, yeah, that you received well, and then you continued in this direction.
Yeah, we stayed in touch for a long time. We like wrote letters to each other. So really appreciated him.
Now I would like to change a little bit the direction of our conversation and ask you about your decision making. So
Okay.
do you manage so how quickly are you able to do it, and do you manage to able to connect to those sacral sounds inside yourself, for example?
All right, Tatiana, this is a very difficult question because I'm extremely indecisive. So if you can imagine being very indecisive,
Yes, I know it.
And then finding out about human design. So I try to pay attention to if I'm getting a strong yes or a strong no. I don't know that I hear a sound. I don't think I really pay attention to that. I'm usually trying to think, what is my initial reaction? And then like with this, you guys asked me to do this. My reaction was yes. But then my privacy stuff was like, well, wait a minute. Do you really want to go talk about yourself in front of people? And is this a good idea? And maybe you shouldn't do this. Like I thought about this like a lot before. I was like, maybe I should just tell them I can't do it.
But
So
the first reaction was yes, yeah?
yeah, the first reaction was yes. So I try to listen to that. But I mean, I have occasionally had like a first reaction that was a yes and then got into something and was like, wow, this is a no. This is not an example of that. Our conversation is not. But like other things that I did in the past where I was like, well, I was really excited about that. And I immediately wanted to do it. And then realized once I was in it that it was not for me. So I found it a little confusing. But I'm trying to listen to what is that initial, that energy, that you feel.
The impulse that begins
Yeah.
at the momentary reaction, yeah.
Well,
Right.
they say about the decision making, and I think it's a little easier for me for me to imagine emotional because I have to wait, and so that gives me more confidence in my decision because I have the same. We've got the 3955, so it's very indecisive about things sometimes. But for you, I mean, for what Ra has said, this is what he says: is like it doesn't mean that it's going to be a good experience or feel like it's a great experience, but it's going to be an experience for you. You know what I mean? So it's like that initial like. Yes was not a mental decision. And that's the point that I think human design is trying to bring us to, where it's like your mind can really mess you up. And I know that you've got a lot of mental and air in your chart. So that could just keep you like stuck for many lifetimes because your mind is trying to figure and solve things for you, but your mind only has history and sometimes trauma and things that are hiding, and even your instincts do, and your body instincts. That's why it takes a while to decondition, because we're all kind of functioning from these places where we might have trauma, stuck things, and then finally, once we clear that out, we can trust our instincts a lot better. But from my point of view, I feel like I have a really strong spleen. So I always kind of have a good first reaction to something, but I do notice that I really do need time to really let that settle in for myself, for the security of understanding what it is, because I'm not in touch with the instincts. And I have a lot of trauma to work through myself. And so if I wait for a long time, then it kind of like, it shows me, life just shows me, oh, this is why you had that, reaction to this person. And then, okay, what are we going to do about it from a very reasonable, like you can think it's mental, but it's more of like, being able to process all of the things that I needed to process to make me feel more comfortable with my decision. And know that I feel more confident. So I think it takes a while before we're all kind of confident in our instincts, right?
Mm-hmm.
Of course.
Well, I'm working on it.
Nice.
You're doing a good job. You're here.
I'm here.
Yeah.
And you're still private. I wanted to point out to people in case they didn't know, she's got her design Mars in gate 33, which is all about privacy, and very intense need for privacy. And it's unconscious in you, even though you are conscious of it. Mm-hmm. It's this instinct, a powerful instinct to protect yourself. And then there's some astrology symbols too that show this. But I just wanted to point that out, that's the reason I was like, oh, I understand a little bit better the privacy, although you're very adaptable and very, like you said, you can connect with lots of people, but how much, can you connect to them, I guess, is probably the biggest thing.
Yeah. But by the way, this gate 36, the sixth line, the trauma of separation, yeah, that's what I have in my neutrino platform software. Yeah, such people are very susceptible to others people pain, and are extremely gentle by nature. It's like that's also gives one more dimension to the understanding of privacy. Yeah. Okay. And can we touch the base of serendipity? Have you experienced some other events when you notice that, like, I'm in the right place at the right time, except this situation with your writing skills and the person who praised you and so on?
I guess one of the clearest examples that stands out to me is meeting my husband, because we were supposed to meet and I canceled on him. And then about a month later, decided that was maybe a mistake and we should get together, and we did. And it turned out that was my husband. So I kind of felt like I was supposed to meet him. Like I messed up my first chance, obviously, but it still happened. And to me, that is a serendipity, because, I mean, that could have easily not have happened at all. You know, so that's one thing. Yeah, I guess there's like some different things that have happened. I mean, I think graduate school worked out for me. I had actually visited that school as a potential undergrad school and didn't choose to go there. But then I had the opportunity to, like 4 or 5 years later, and I love this city and I've lived here ever since. So I got here. It was a little
Okay.
my stuff's a little slow, but it seems like it works out.
Yeah.
That's nice.
It's
Yeah.
funny. It's funny because, like, people are like, well, they're really concerned about their decisions. And I think we're on a path and a trajectory, and sometimes we experience the resistance to where we're supposed to go, and we don't get there in a timely manner, maybe. But I don't think that we're going to miss our trajectory. Even it's going to keep trying to push us there, even if we resist it. And so it's more about living life with, like Ra says, living life with less resistance, less trauma in our minds, I think, because we just get so wrapped up into what are we here for? What are we doing here? And trying to adapt to everybody else outside of ourselves, to the messages that we hear from others, like you should be like this, or you should be like that, or you should be like this. And that's the resistance, I think, that comes up, that makes people sick, that makes people miserable. But if we kind of let go and we kind of listen, we get to where we're supposed to go without having to go through all of this pain. I mean, obviously we're going to go through pain, but without all of the mental anguish, I think, that we put ourselves through about making the right decisions.
Oh, this, yeah. So should we switch to movement then from decisions and this difficult, yeah. So whether it's dance, sports, or just a mindful connection with the body, can be definitely movement can be such a beautiful expression of energy. How do you relate to your body? Do you feel like movement is a regular part of your life, Raiden?
So I always wanted to be a dancer or like a cheerleader and all those things. But I was very uncoordinated. And because I tried, and I was obviously just not going to work out for my feet and moving around and stuff and everything. But as an adult, especially in the past few years, I've started Pilates. I really love reformer Pilates, which is amazing. Just stretching out, like feels so good. And I've started playing tennis. My family plays tennis. I never played any sport in my life, so this is really weird, but I enjoy it, and it's just really fun. And we've met like a big community of people. So movements coming in different ways. And then, of course, I guess, with theater, that was a different sort of movement, like stage movement and everything.
Yeah, but the stage movement is quite a thing, yeah?
Yeah.
You have to be conscious of your body all the time, yeah?
Right. But like dancing, no. I mean, I don't think I'm even good at running. I will fall over. So I try.
Oh, yeah. Okay, and then Suzanne, would you like to ask something? Do you have this emotional question, yeah? About this.
Yeah, well, I was wondering, I know that your children are both, your husband's not emotional, right? Your children are.
Just my daughter. We're all a bunch of, well, he's a Manny Gen, my husband, and me and my son are generators. And then my daughter is a Manny Gen emotional person with the emoting channel.
Okay.
I
With
thought
our channel. With our favorite channel.
judgment and the emotional channel, and I was like, okay, I understand this person. I thought your son was too. Sorry about that.
No, that's okay.
So with her, how does that affect you? Do you feel her? Do you sense her moodiness? Is that have you seen her moodiness, or has she not? I know that she's younger, but have you sensed that she's a moody person at all?
Oh yes, you cannot miss that. She will not allow you. She's very moody. I know that I know she's emotional, and I know she has this channel, this emotional wave going on. So I just try to be like really supportive, like hug her, listen to her. And I also tell her, I think if this is correct, I might be wrong, but with the emotional channel, it sounds like you just have waves of emotion that don't really need like an explanation. They just kind of go through you.
Yeah.
So I'm like, look, you've got these waves of emotions that go through. They don't necessarily mean anything. You just need to ride the wave. And while you're doing it, why don't you make some art or
Yeah.
write or something? Because from what I understand, that's a great time to try to make art. But I do all the supportive mom stuff. If one needs to cry, I'll be like, just get it all out. Just go ahead and cry. No need to hold it in or pretend like you're okay. I
Yeah.
do feel it. Like a couple of times here recently, we've had some big things happen. She broke both her wrists at the same time, and she started middle school, and there's just been a lot of stuff going on. But there's been times where she's been so upset that I have felt like I can't keep it together. Like I am going to start crying also. And I think that part of me is that mom thing where I want to like fix things for her, and it's hard to see her hurting, but I think I'm also feeling her stuff,
Yeah.
like, and the other day she got very upset about something, and we went through, like talking and everything. And then I just went and laid on my bed because I was like, I can't like really process anything else right now. I have to have some space. And I think that might be me connecting to her energy.
Yeah.
Of course, this energy is quite powerful.
It's so beautiful, I think, that you met human design for her,
Me
because
too. I'm so glad.
without that, understanding, because you're not emotional, it might have been to push her to solve it and to avoid it and all of those things, which that's what kind of causes a lot of the issues, I think, because there's not an understanding there. But of course, you have to help yourself too, and to learn when to just let it be and let her be emotional, and for you to kind of, like you said, you did you feel, because some people describe it as they feel all of this emotions when somebody's in their aura, but once they leave, it's gone. Did you felt the remnants of it?
I think that I feel it when I'm with her and she's going through something. I don't really notice it just being around her. It's more like there's something going on. And a lot of times I'm not super emotional and I can do all sorts of things without crying or, or having any, other people would need their box of tissues, not me. But like now I feel, I can tell that it's getting in there, which is okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. As soon as you can let it go. Yeah.
Yeah. I'm just trying to like help her and do whatever is healthy for her to manage emotions and to be okay having them. Like it's fine to have emotions, do them,
Yeah,
and
of course.
it's also awesome that you got her into tennis, because that 1858 needs an outlet, a physical outlet, and that is also helpful for people like emotional people, which I found to be contradictory in the human design system. That's when you look at things in isolation, because I learned earlier, not early on, I'm not a good body person. I have 2 left feet. I had to really train myself to run, and then I started to like it. But it was super helpful for my mental health to be able to exercise. And so that I think that 1850, anything that's strongly connected to your root, really needs an outlet, a physical outlet for, right, Tatiana?
Yeah, absolutely. So like now I'm implementing finally sport in my life, even though I'm years into yoga and I love it, but it's like always was on and off. Here, some months I do it, then a long pause comes and so on. But the main reason that motivates me is how I feel after it, not even physically. Yeah,
Yeah, mentally.
Yeah, mentally. That's my main motivation at the moment. Let's see what I would achieve, but it helps enormously. Why didn't I understand it earlier? Yeah, thanks to human design, but why didn't I understand it earlier? So it could have saved me so much troubles. Yeah, but it's okay.
Yeah.
It works better than any kind of medicine. That's amazing.
Well, I could tell while she was out of or on the bench, out of action for 3-4 weeks with her wrists. I could tell the difference between her ability to handle her emotions. Like she was much more, it was obviously much better when she was out there playing, and getting all that energy out. And when she couldn't, I could tell the difference big time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think the moodiness of the 3955 is challenging to describe, because it's individual for both, all of us, but in the creativity doesn't always come until after, your wave 2, because definitely you can work through it, but there's a lot of pressure, I think, from somebody who has an emotional inner root definition, strong connection. There's a lot of internal pressure. People always think about the judgment channel as being out external, but really it can manifest itself as internal. And there's a lot of perfectionism that can manifest in that channel. From my point of view, it's like my mom was so artistic and she was so good at so many things. She was an MG. And so she would try to teach me things, but I would just have this, it was really hard for me, because I had this, I felt the pressure, and it was probably not from her, but it was my own internal pressure. And when I felt if I feel pressure from an external place, because I have so much internal, it makes it 500 times worse. And then I kind of, I react negatively to it, really ferociously. We both are from 49.5. I don't know, Tatiana, if it happens to you, but if somebody's coming at me and has this expectation, I have so much internal expectations, then I will completely snap at them and I will quit and I will be like, no, I'm not going to do this anymore because of that. Do you feel that way?
Comes Kali, yeah. You like turn into Kali goddess, and that's how it looks like on the inside and on the outside also.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So
Well,
can I
she
move?
definitely has the perfectionist thing going on because one of her teachers actually told us not to put pressure on her about grades or anything because she was taking care of that herself. Like she's already put all the pressure on herself to be perfect. So she's like, y'all can't come in with any extra, you must get an A or anything like that, which we don't. But it was just kind of good to hear that, to know that I need to incorporate that into my approach to her,
Yeah.
is not to put too much pressure on her because she's already very capable of doing that herself.
Yeah.
That's nice. Yeah, so my son, for example, his therapist told me like he has a lot of fears regarding his learning process. So he controls everything totally by himself, and we are not interfering. But to be honest, nowadays they have a lot of pressure inside in this school environment and inside of them. So definitely our children better be left alone, of course, if they not request any kind of help, because the pressure is enormous from outside in the school system. But if she has pressure from inside, then
Just try to
I couldn't imagine myself at school nowadays. It's like totally different scenario. You cannot compare it with with what we had. Yeah.
exactly.
Could we move to the very interesting topic of gender fluidity?
Oh,
Yes. Yes.
so
How have you ever felt that kind of fluidity in your own sense of self or identity?
I mean, no, but yes. I don't know.
Good answer.
I feel like this is kind of funny story to tell, but when I was little, I would tell people I wanted to be Robin from Batman and Robin. And I would literally meet people and tell them my name was Robin. And my mom would never correct me. She never said anything about it. And this was not when we were not on the internet at this time. Like my mom didn't rush home to find out why, what was up with me and taking me to a therapist or whatever. And then I know I went through like a phase where I wanted to be a boy, and I would wear my cutoff shorts with no shirt, and I wanted I would tell everyone I was a boy. And what I think was happening, I don't think it was like a sexuality thing. I was only probably 6 or 7. I think that all of the good parts in movies and TV and everything that I watched, those good parts were men's roles. So
Yeah.
I wanted to be in Batman and Robin. I wanted to be Bo and Luke Duke or Han Solo or
Of
Luke
course.
Skywalker. I did not want to be Princess Leia or Daisy Duke, you know? So like to me, I think that those were the good roles. And I wasn't interested in the one who just stood on the side. But I just went through that little phase, and I'm not sure that was really like a fluidity or anything. I mean, I was so little. And then I haven't really had anything else since then. I've always been like extremely girly girl
Mhm.
and
Okay, so
always
7,
dated
8, you were like
like
drawn
five,
to.
5, 6, 7.
Mhm.
Yeah, really pretty, just starting school and everything, and introduced myself as Robin. So,
Nice.
and my parents, it didn't bother them. I mean, they, like I said, like now I feel like if this was your child, you'd start taking action, but my parents like didn't even really notice, I don't think.
But you had such a wise parents, I would say. Like it's nice. Yeah.
Yeah, I think
Because
they
I
probably
would be.
thought I was being a kid.
Mhm. Yeah,
Yeah, I
that's
think it's hard for parents these days because I think for girls there's still a lot, or there has been a lot of leeway for them to be, more tomboyish when they're younger. And for men, I don't think that we give them as much leeway. Are we starting to? But then, yeah, the gender issue about, the pronouns and things like that. I think there is definitely something to, some people say that they just let their kids just explore those areas. And then there are some kids that go through very intense need to be defined a certain way. So it's kind of it's a hard as a parent to walk, for sure.
Mhm.
Know which way to go, for their kids. We all love our kids. We want to do the best for them.
Right.
Yeah.
And I honestly don't understand all this stuff. And I feel like that's not cool or politically correct too. But I don't have any experience with it really. I don't work in schools. I'm not at a university anymore. So I feel like lost touch with what's going on with younger people. And I don't totally really get it. But I mean, if it comes up at our house, we'll just go with the flow.
Yeah. That's very adaptable. That's a very adaptable to your sun sign. Going with the flow and letting things be. And so do you want to, Tatiana, do you want to move on to the astrology?
So we have one last question remain, so it's nice. When I saw the people who attract your attention, we saw all these extremely beautiful women. We discussed in the beginning of our episode. This is how I want to approach my last question regarding your human design. Let's talk about beauty. Yeah, do you feel like you see that in yourself, and have others reflected that back to you?
I mean, and that's where I think I start thinking about, do I really know myself? I'm pretty critical of myself. And I'm probably harder on myself, or not wanting to say that, oh yes, I have some beauty in myself or whatever. But I do feel like I have a lot of love for people that I want to share. I feel like life is really hard right now. And if you can, radiate some joy out in the world and just be kind and maybe give somebody a compliment, chat with somebody who, in line at the post office or whatever, and it just kind of brightens their day, then I feel like that is some beauty that I can send out. I just want to think things, it's a hard time, and I want to be positive, and maybe somebody else has like a positive interaction with me that day and it made their day better. But I am like super critical of myself. I'm probably like really reluctant to say that there would be all these good things that I do or whatever.
Just I brought this question also because in my personal experience, I have at least two close contacts of mine with 5710 channel of perfected form. Outstandingly beautiful women, I would put it like this. Like the ones that you when you pass them on the street, you look back like in this matrix, like, oh, this lady in red. To be honest, dear audience, while we managed to see Elizabeth just a little bit, I had a sneak peek. She's truly beautiful. Yes, also like you confirmed my expectations. That's why
I would not like go out and say that I'm beautiful. That's like too hard for me to do. But I know it's definitely, I would say, very more attractive when I was younger. I'm okay now. I'm good. But but I do love beautiful things. I do love beautiful things though. Like I love I love, like I was saying with Taylor Swift, I love what she did on stage, the costumes, the lighting, like I love interior design and a beautiful car. I mean, I love flowers. So I am very into how beautiful can we make it.
Form,
Yeah. Perfection. You've got, you can see this a little bit. For me, I see it a lot more in your astrology chart.
Now we move on to astrology chart.
But I was wondering if we didn't talk about your cross, the cross of limitation. And one of the things that came up when we talked about, what's next for you, because you're kind of, I don't know, you mentioned you wrote a few books, but you hadn't really, you kind of been doing, your career has been kind of like working for bigger companies, but not as fulfilling. And you were kind of like, is this fulfilling? Am I really living, as we all question our middle life, is this it, So right. Do you want to talk about that at all, about like the dreams that you have to go? There was a couple of things that you said to me. I'm not sure if you're comfortable with telling the audience, but the things that you could imagine yourself being in your greatest imagination.
No, I don't mind sharing that. So I have like a whole bunch of journals, which I told Suzanne, and I'm starting to read through them. And I've always wanted to teach English in the college or teach creative writing or something. Like I've always wanted to be an English professor. And that was something I was discouraged from in undergrad because my professors were like, well, there are no jobs. There's no jobs. And something that I continue to hear and still hear now, that there's just no jobs. And yet most of my friends who went through graduate program have jobs as English professors. So, but I didn't follow that path. I kind of felt like that was not feasible and I needed to get a job because, you know, my dad had passed away at that point and I needed to make money and be responsible for myself because I couldn't just like lean on him for backup. So I just started working corporate. And during that time, actually, I think around 35, I finally wrote like a complete manuscript. So I've written like 3 or 4 of them. It just takes me a while between each one because I also want to publish. Like I want to be like a writer and publish books. I would kind of like to be famous and have some sort of personality out there, even though I'm super private. But it takes me years between these books to, I guess, get the motivation to do it again. But yeah, like, I guess if I could do anything, I would teach creative writing and write books, and I would live at the beach
And
near a tennis court.
And you mentioned if you did publish that you would publish under a pseudonym.
Well, that is attractive to me due to the privacy, but I kind of want to be out there at the same time.
Okay.
I will think to myself that I want to be the Taylor Swift of novelists. You know, whatever that looks like as a novelist, I'm not sure, but.
And it's interesting because, you know, the ways that we're out there as 5/1s, like I could totally see, and it's part of my judgment to talk about this, but it's like, you know, writers have the ability to construct whatever fantasy, you know, that they want about how people view them, you know? And so I just thought it was so interesting, this concept of privacy versus projection, and how do we deal with that as a 5/1, and whether you know, that exploration is, do we, you know, people aren't going to see us anyway, so we might as well project a certain fantasy in a way, even though the celebrity status is kind of going away in some ways, but in other ways it's taking on a new life form with AI and all those things. But I wanted to show how I see your you know, your perfectionist in the chart and your attraction to aesthetics. And do you want to talk about this other dream of being a lifestyle? Like there's this part of you that really loves
Shopping, fashion,
and
clothing.
fashion, which I can also see in your chart. So you want to share a little bit about that?
Yeah, that's something else I also have like secretly wanted to do, was be an influencer and like, you know, show outfits and fun shoes and things for your house and stuff like that. But again, that's like, you know, that would be like really not private. I guess I could do it under a fake name. And part of me, it struggles with it because like some of it I'll watch and I'm like, this is so cringe, you know, and I don't want to constantly be taking money from someone to advertise something I don't like. So who knows? But if I could just do it for fun and it was easy, I think it would be cool.
That could be a character of yours that you write about.
Yes, it could be. A lot of stuff that I'm interested in, I'll think, well, just write it, just make it a character. You don't have to do it, just make it a character.
Yeah, I mean, because like in your astrology chart, when we look at introversion versus extroversion, a lot of people say, and I've experienced this myself, is, you know, when you have when you were born at night, so your sun is below the horizon, you're more private, or it's hard for you to be out there in, you know, in the spotlight. I was a theater person. I actually had the similar struggle as you with theater and English, and I chose theater. But I went to grad school for theater, and it was probably I know that it was less lucrative than if I went to English. But I wasn't talented I love to read, but I was not a talented creative writer. And I was better at theater, but my son is also in the 5th house. And so you have a lot of creative skills, but it's hard to be in the spotlight. But you do have your moon here in the 10th house. And so generally a moon in the 10th house is like, you know, finding security in your career in some way. But you know, when we explored your moon, it's also in what they call Munakara, which means it's like you know, it's got a need for privacy. So what you seek in your career, this imagination of what you want to be, it's a balance, because you don't, you know, you have this fear of being vulnerable or being seen in a way outside, in, you know, where it can get out of control, basically. You know,
Right.
people do get out of control. They do cancel people, all sorts of stuff that's happening in our life, which makes it kind of understandable to want to have some things that are private. But still, people do manage privacy and celebrity. A lot of people manage that. If they're really secure in themselves, they kind of put that, like, you know, that part on a very tight, you know, framework where they're not always out there in the salacious headlines. Some people use the salacious headlines to their advantage, and other people are like, I gotta have a more control over how people are invading my privacy. And sometimes that gets out of control and you can't help it, like Taylor Swift. But then, you know, you get through that. But I wanted to look at you have Venus in Virgo, and Venus in Virgo is where kind of the perfectionist, but also the beauty is, like, because describe Venus is in Virgo as, you know, they're very particular in the ways that they want to show up, or the ways that they're very aesthetically minded, but they're also like what they call the temple priestesses. You know, Virgo is like the purity, the beauty of the women that they would kind of put in the temples, that, you know, they weren't used as sexual objects, but they were used as the purity goddesses, you know, and people that are untouched.
That sounds good.
And so, you know, so that's kind of and then you've got a lot of Libra, and Libra, of course, is beauty. You know, people who have Libra are considered very, you know, in some senses, very beautiful, and because it's ruled by Venus. So it's, you know, you've got that extra, you know, you've got a sun ruled by Venus, but you're different because you've got Uranus right next to your sun. And so you're, you know, you're very, very different. And I think sometimes might be conflicts in how to embrace that part of yourself. And then there's, you know, some things that had happened to you when you were really young. Like you know, like you mentioned, your dad got sick and passed, and then your mom not very long after that. Do you think that increased your need for privacy at all?
I think that it just made me more worried about everything, like, because you just know that your life can be fine, and then the next day you find out that it's not fine anymore, and like significantly not fine. That's going to be very, very bad. And I think that kind of stuff worries me. Just knowing that, I guess I'm risk averse. I'm very risk averse. And yeah, it's had like a big impact on me. That's
Yeah.
for sure.
Yeah, and then your Saturn, because I've seen this repetition a lot in people with undefined throats. Either they have Saturn on Mercury or Saturn in the first house. I don't know that this is a pattern you see in a lot of charts because I haven't seen, but I have seen them in quite a few. So Saturn is kind of that, and you saw that in your gate 45. So that kind of restricts you or makes you more serious about how you present yourself. But it's also in Gemini, so that's also what makes you a brilliant writer. And then you've got Mercury in Scorpio, so you're out there really digging deep into your characters, and that's kind of some ways that you can actually utilize all of the that you can live vicariously through that energy, really, because you want to dig into the depth of your characters. You're very good at writing. With Saturn in Gemini is a person that can be definitely a teacher. So if that's the dream that you want to, if you feel safer, I guess, in that going into more of the professor role, then I would definitely tell you to continue in that direction, because you have mastery there. You have mastery there from many, Saturn is kind of like what you bring in to the world as a from your family, genetic inheritance of this writer that you're able to, I think really own that about yourself, is that you have a lot of talent there. So if it's that you want to have that security, either from the pseudonym of, being a writer that's published, but you're more private, or you want to go, or both. I think that you definitely have that capability to do that and explore that, because it's there in your chart. So whatever makes you from an undefined throat that makes you more private. Also, sometimes we look at our flaws and we think of them as flaws, but really they're also where we shine.
Mm-hmm.
Turning that, need for security and privacy into something that's positive. That's why I approach this episode this way, because we don't necessarily have to look at our, oh my God, I want to be private, but here I am, this 5-1. What's missing? Well, it maybe nothing missing. This is your unique spin on being this celebrity that can totally invent themselves, and showcase themselves to people, and turn that, in a positive direction, rather than, oh, I'm really scared of, like a lot of people are kind of like, I don't want to go out there, because they have had negative experiences of being thrown into the fire. And then they're like, oh, I don't like that. But at the same time, it's like, well, okay. The best part, I think, people think that when they're functioning properly as a 5-1, they're not going to be burned at the stake. It's more about they're going to agree that that's the projection that they want to own. And then if they have that agreement that that's the projection, then they're able to kind of live that out as a costume, basically. Right, Tatiana?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, of course you're right. Yeah.
Yeah, I feel like I am learning so much from this conversation.
Good. And it is also, your Venus is also tied to your Chiron. It's like it's an adjusting energy. So it's like this, you've got your Chiron in this 11th house of groups, of dreams and wishes. And that's kind of the wound of, going forth and actually, taking action toward that. Oh my God, what if something happens? You do definitely have history, because you've got Mars right next to Uranus. So history of that kind of going sideways. And so there's a reason why you have these fears. And so you kind of have to adjust your expectations about what that might look like, and use your beautiful going with the flow and adaptation that you have as part of you is just kind of like, okay, well, this is going to happen and I'm just going to work with it. I'm going to move it in a direction that I can prepare myself best to kind of adjust as I go.
That is all very good advice and much needed.
Good. All right. So I think we're done.
That's how she does it.
Tatiana, do you have any more questions?
I suppose I'm done with questions for today. Yeah, it was a very nice conversation. Maybe you have something to say, Elizabeth, or?
No, I feel like this has been great. I was concerned I'd be like this very boring guest, so I hope I've been okay. But I know that I've learned a lot, and it's been really interesting.
Yeah, well, you were actually a very fascinating guest because you gave us a problem and we went with it. Like, not a problem, but it was like, I don't know if I want to be president. I was like, well, you don't have to. Let's turn this into something very interesting to explore. And so I'm actually excited that you agreed to come on the show and to explore this area of privacy with us that we hadn't actually encountered. So I'm actually happy with this episode, and I'm really glad that you had the courage to come on. I thought it was great.
Thank you. Well, I appreciate you asking me to do the show. Like I said, I wasn't expecting that at all, and it's been really a great experience.
Good. Okay, so you can drop off if you want. We're going to go on to our judgments now, but if you have somewhere to go, I can't remember, you might have something to do, but feel free to stay on as well.
What are judgments? I don't think I've seen.
They're just our little commentary about things. Sometimes we talk about movies. I'm going to talk about a movie today. Tatiana is going to talk about something, I think, more enlightening.
Yeah, of course, because his name was Pico della Mirandola. I suppose I pronounce it a little bit closer to his Italian, so the way it is said in Italy. So I was fascinated by this person when I was studying philosophy at the university. We had so many names to learn, so many books to read, and I knew the name, and that's it. Yeah, I knew that he was somewhere there in 50th century and something like that. But then I bought Cosmos and Psyche, wonderful book that I still have to read just because I'm digging into Gabor Mate for the moment, and the book is huge, but I couldn't resist.
What is the book again? Tell the audience again.
So Cosmos and Psyche by Richard Tarnas.
Cosmos, Cosmos and Psyche. That's
Psyche, sorry. Psyche. Who's speaking Greekish here? Yeah, sorry. Greek, all Greek language. Yeah, so Cosmos and Psyche, and the book is definitely very interesting. But I only started first few pages, and he mentions Pico della Mirandola there. And he uncovered this personality for me, and I started to dig it. So that's how it happened. Okay, he mentions him as kind of father of European mysticism, the person who brought Kabbalah to the Christianity, and the one who initiated all this exchange between cultures. And then I noticed that he died when he was only 31, that early. So he wrote one of his most famous piece, Oration on the Dignity of Man, when he was 23 years old only. So he started very early. Very early he was educated. So he comes from a respectable, rich family. And he studied Latin and Greek, ancient Greek language at the very early age, because his mother was expecting he would be a church person, some kind of, like a lot of his relatives, he would be related to Catholic Church. But instead of it, he moved in unpredictable ways and developed himself. And he was a very talented since his early childhood. And he was recognized even in his early childhood as an outstanding person. So what was especially interesting with him, so he was trying to combine different philosophical schools and even some kind of Islamic studies Yeah, and he brought Kabbalah, and it was definitely unusual at the time. Yeah, and he was almost burned at the stake. He received a lot of negative attention for such a views, and it was also rumored that he was homosexual. And here in the middle we see the picture of 4 persons, and the one who stays front to looks at us, yeah, like a little bit to side. This is his name is Poliziano. He was a scholar and a poet, and they died together on at the same day. Yeah, and it was rumored that they were lovers. But this attempt, so he is also known for first declaration of dignity of man, yeah, and understanding a man as a central piece, as a masterpiece of creation. Yeah, after dark ages it was hard to believe, because like man carries sin and is sinful itself by its nature. Yeah, how could it be that the man stays in the center and learns the world, and that's his destiny? So he turned it all out. He was only 23 when he wrote this oration on yeah, and he even planned a dispute and promised to pay all the travel expenses to the respectable scientists who were ready to attend this dispute in Florence. But of course, it was all stopped in the very beginning. Only book was published, and only after his death. But still became very famous for such an attempt to collect famous minds of his time and to discuss to make a dispute the way Plato could have done it, or Aristotle. Yeah, so amazing personality. And supposedly he was also digging into alchemy. Of course he should be. Yeah, alchemy, Kabbalah, philosophy, Islamic studies, and all possible things. And he was extremely interesting in this all. And what also fascinated me, you see here the paintings from Raphael, and he was it is supposed that he was pictured there. And you see the face on the right, one of his also we cannot confirm it, definitely one of his portraits, but you see how beautiful this face is, and how strong the personality pictured there was. Yeah, like let's imagine this portrait more or less resembles the original person. Can you please go to the next slide?
I want to point out that he's a Pisces, and he died on our design sun. Anyway.
Okay. So I didn't investigate. It's definitely would be difficult to find out the exact time of his birth, but probably he was also deep into astrology. So maybe one needs to check a little bit more. But I was lucky to find a small publication in New Yorker regarding his death. Yeah, and on Stanford's website, you can also find more detailed research on the matter, on his personality and his works, more on his ideas. And the one in New York tells about his murder mystery. So how could it happen that 2 famous scholars died on the same day, and they were close friends? So we don't know if they were lovers, but they died together the same day. And even at that time, it was considered to be very suspicious. Yeah, like it definitely looks like poisoning, most likely. Yeah. And as I investigated it, so mysterious circumstances. Pico died under at the age of 31, together with his friends Angelo Poliziano, their death sparked speculation and suspicion through the Renaissance Europe at the time. And they had very special symptoms, which definitely were discussed. Like most likely it could have been arsenic poisoning. Yeah, arsenic poisoning.
Oh my God.
Difficult death, but it was like a weapon of choice at that time in Florence and in Italy in medieval times. And at the end, as it was told, as I read, he at the end he accepted his death, because it was quite a long process, to be honest. He didn't die in one day, so it continued for a while. It was suffering, but he was like quite a philosophical and stoic in it. And the story continues in 2007, when his remains were exhumed and showed toxic levels of arsenic. The same thing was for the remains of his friend. Yeah, so it is definitely confirmed they were killed, so they were poisoned. Both, it's unimaginable how such brilliant minds, such outstanding personalities, like 1 in a million, I suppose 1 in 2 million, 3, like the leading minds of their times, were simply killed just because he was close to Girolamo Savonarola, the crazy monk, and so on. So, but could it be a reason, if he was so involved in his ideas before his death? And supposedly Piero di Medici, so his predecessor, yeah, Lorenzo, was like a kind of patron for Pico della Mirandola. He was taking care of him. He was really protecting him from Inquisition. Then he died, and the one who came after him simply poisoned him and his friend out of any kind of political reasons.
He must have been a heretic, right? He must have
Yeah,
been.
so most likely, yeah. So absolute heretic. He was outstanding in the way he approached. So he even cited some famous Islamic scholars, and this was exactly at the time when. It happened exactly at the time when Constantinople was taken by Ottomans, like this period of time, and that was definitely not the most popular trend, because our holy city is now under Muslims, and this is a tragedy. And he's talking about any kind of science coming from this direction, and his attention to Kabbalah, because anti-Semitism was active also at that time. So I'm really amazed by his personality. It's a pity that I didn't pay attention to it before, but I'm lucky to know it now. And it would be definitely interesting to trace his influence until the modern esoteric thought, because he was the one who initiated this development and this merge with Kabbalah, and he influenced everything, also our modern esoteric field and all that we have, and partially human design also, let's put it like this.
It's interesting is the death is on Scorpio, and the gate 14, that's our design sun. So Scorpio energy is this poison sting. The sting of the scorpion's tail is quite powerful. It takes a little bit for that sting to come, but it will come.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, it's very interesting.
He was only 31, and he could have written so many things. He had done so many things. Yeah.
Yeah, I have to look at him now. Thank you for sharing. Okay, so
nice.
This is interesting because I have been so busy lately. I've been thankfully having some great readings lately, but it's made me incredibly busy. So I'm like, what am I going to do for my judgments? I have nothing. And then all of a sudden came in this realization that I watched this movie this weekend with my husband. And I was like, oh my God, this is perfect, this movie, because it's about projections, really. And, I'm not sure if you know Jeffrey Wright, but he's a great actor. I actually looked up his design. He doesn't have a time of birth, but he is a 2/4, definitely. He might be a reflector, or he might be a manifesting generator or something, a cross of separation. I just thought it was interesting that he might be a reflector. He's a great actor, and he is in this show, and it's basically about projection, about this writer. He's a brilliant writer, and he happens to be Black. And, he writes these very literary books that nobody buys. He's bitter. He's basically bitter about it. He is in this, he's a professor, and he's kind of upset that in a variety of ways about why he's not actually having more success. And his publisher's like, well, they want something, they want Black writers. He's like, well, wait, they want Black fiction. And he's like, wait, I'm producing fiction and I'm Black. Why do I need to do anything else? And it's basically like, this is who I am. I'm an individual, and I don't want to put out this other crap that sells, basically. And so then he does this exercise where he meets this other Isa, who is a beautiful actress. She's a 3-5, actually. She's a projector, a splenic projector. But Isa, what is her last name? I can't remember it off the top of my head. But she's been on an HBO special. She's in the movie, and she's basically him as a woman. She's not from this, the books that she writes are from the ghetto experience, basically. And it's what sells, I guess. And she writes from that perspective, even though she wasn't, she has no personal connection. She's also went to a very good school and all that. And he thinks that's false, and putting and kind of pinholing Black people into this box, and he doesn't like it, and he's kind of got a snobbish view of that. And so you go through this whole experience where he basically is like, fine, I'll just write this book, and it'll be under a pseudonym, and he'll write it so like a satire, so offhandishly that they'll reject it, but they end up becoming the success. He's like, oh my God, and then he has to put on this role, this projected role of who he is. He comes up with this idea that he's private, and he's actually on like a fugitive. And basically, I'm sorry, this is going to give you all of the details of this.
No, but okay.
So if you don't want, you want to watch it, I definitely encourage you to watch it. But if you don't want any, all of the details, then you probably should stop listening. But he basically says he's fugitive, and he kind of tries to manage this role, which is hilarious because it's so not him. And then he meets this woman who really likes his books that are literary, but then he puts out this book, and then he becomes, they actually pick him to be a judge. And, basically his book gets presented to this place where he has to judge it. And him and Isa are like, well, this is pandering, we don't like it, but all the other people love it. And then it becomes this bestseller. And he gets chosen as this awards, and he's like, what am I doing? And he sells it to make this movie, and then he makes this plot to where they reject it, or he comes out, but it doesn't say, he finally owns up to it, but it kind of has an ending that's ambiguous because he doesn't want, he wants to be different. But then at the same time, he kind of is snobby to his girlfriend, who actually really likes the book. And then, she basically rejects him because he's being so snobby about it. And then basically at the end of the day, he makes this ending that the audience wants, which basically means that he's shot down after he makes this announcement that he's the author, because he's supposedly this fugitive. But it's just an amazing exploration of projections and how we kind of poo-poo them and how we rebel against them. And then kind of this fine line behind well, why do people like this? And is it okay that they like these, these stories that are kind of generic and superficial, and is that okay? And it's just such a great exploration. So even if I gave you the plot story and gave you some spoilers, it's a great funny movie to watch, and I think it has a lot of interesting themes to kind of explore, especially as we were talking about celebrity and pseudonyms and what we want to present to the world versus who we are. I know I rebel against these projections and actually going. I have this person that I've been talking to. She's made such a big splash on her YouTube, and I know all the things to do, and I just won't do them. Because I'm rebellious. I'm an individual. I'm like, I don't want to do them, even if it means that I'll be successful. I'm like, so there's that. I think there's that conflict in us, I think, as 5-1s. So like, do we want to go out as individual 5-1s? Do we really want to go out and be this thing that we don't, like everybody else is doing? Is that really what we want to do? And all that stuff. What do you think, Tatiana? Do you have that conflict in you?
Yeah. So that was with me all my life, and now I started to feel that it somehow became easy. So maybe I would definitely feel better when this conflict would be not that flaming inside me, not that much present in me. So like it looks like it goes down, and I feel better.
Yeah.
Just because not that much time is left, actually.
Yeah, I know.
Time to create some interesting things. Yeah.
Yeah.
Who knows? But I hope that arsenic poisoning is not coming our way. so we're gonna manage to do the things that are interesting for us.
Well, yeah. They say the way that you die is like the cusp of your 8th house, and mine's Venus. And so I hope that it'll be gentle. Venus gentle. Not poison. But we aren't, we're kind of at the edge of Pisces. So he was a Pisces. So when he died, it was on a trine to his sun, Scorpio. So, maybe, who knows? I don't like to try to look into that too much.
But by the way, I just tried to make his chart. Why didn't I do it before? I don't know. Don't ask me. Suzanne makes all charts. And I'm like, really, sometimes I didn't do it, but it is impossible. I didn't manage to do it in Neutrino platform, and then I tried to do it on Jovian archive, and they tell me that I have to choose year between 1 and 1700 and later.
Yeah.
So maybe you can. Is it possible to do an astrological chart at least?
You can. I've done like really. When I was looking at that 1776 or something, it was in there. So probably I'll look at it and see. But yeah, from the human design perspective, I think they've got some capabilities of doing that from the ephemeris. So you might be able to look at an old ephemeris, but I'm not sure. But I definitely can look at it from an astrological perspective. But converting that into like profiles, and I'm not able to do that. The calculations. It would be interesting.
But still.
I learned that astrology. It really helped me understand astrology a lot better, learning the calculations. And somebody in another group, Johannes, was asking about the astrological differences between sidereal and stuff, and I was like, yeah, I kind of understand how that works, but I already went through it, and now I understand how all of this is such a construct, time and how we line up everything is just dependent on, it's very much enlightening. So if you ever want to learn astrological calculations, and definitely the next step would be, how does it, I really definitely want to look at how this was constructed. So understanding the calculations from the human design chart would be an interesting thing to learn. So if he's out there that knows how and can teach us, please reach out.
Please reach out. Heretics are always ready to investigate.
Investigating heretics, for sure.
Yeah, of course. So it's time to say thank you, everybody who survived till the end of our communication.
But we had an amazing guest. Talking to you, Tatiana. It was beautiful. That's the only thing I come here for.
Yeah, so Elizabeth, thanks a million for everything, for your openness and being so brave. Yeah.
Thank you for having me. This has been so fun, and I plan to watch this movie.
Good.
Oh,
Good. You
nice.
should. It's a great movie. I think it'll be good for you.
Okay.
All right. Ciao. Ciao.
Ciao, Cacao. Ciao,
Bye.
Cacao.
Bye.
Everybody. Bye.